Good morning. I'm Pratap Singh Gaikwad and welcome to another episode of the Buggy Khana. This morning, I'd like to introduce you to my Maruti 800 and also introduce you to our special guest, Nikhil, who's going to join me on this episode where we discuss more about this iconic car and the effect that she had in the Indian market. So welcome Nikhil to the Buggy
Thank you,
Khana.
sir. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure is all mine.
Good. So, today we are talking about the Maruti 800, an iconic car in the Indian context. Something that I know, are very knowledgeable about, which also is very surprising because, you are how old?
22.
You're 22 years old, and how old is this car?
I think she would be at least, she's probably just turned 40 or nearly there.
So, it's refreshing also to see someone of your age that's so passionate about this car and so knowledgeable. So, thank you for, having that passion. Let's talk a bit more about this car,
Sure.
starting with maybe this one itself.
So this happens to be, I think, 1984 or 85 car probably, because
Right.
these were built between December of 1983 and I think June of 86. About say 50,000 cars sold.
Right.
So this is somewhere between that threshold. I would say this is a really fine specimen. Like if you take a look at the body line, you see the completely straight lines.
Yeah.
No warping anywhere, nothing bent, very little rust. And as you can see, it's wearing this beautiful shade of blue, which I think really matches your Nissan nicely.
Yeah.
And this color was called powder blue
Right.
back in the day.
Right.
Like you got few shades, you got a blue, you got a red, a white, a brown, and then green, which was very, very hard to find because the last few cars of 1986 got that color. When you look at this car even today, like I said, it's a design which is probably 50 years old because it was introduced in Japan much before it came to India.
Right.
But when you look at it today, it's so simple, it's so basic. They probably designed it with a ruler. But I mean, it's so beautiful. I mean, it is something that I feel would never go out of style. Like you put it anywhere in front of anything, I think it would just beautify whatever you put it in front of.
No, you're very, very right about that because again, having her in my garage, and I've had friends come down and, just having a look, and immediately their attention surprisingly goes onto this car.
Despite everything else in your diverse garage, this happens to be the eye candy.
Correct.
And that is so true of the SS80 in general. Like I have worked on a fair bit of these and driven them around, and whenever I take it around, it turns heads, irrespective whether the car is in as good shape as this one is, or it's an absolute rust bucket. Like people will turn around to look at it. And many a times people have come over to the window while I'm at a signal and had a conversation with me saying that, oh, my granddad owned one of these back in the day. Oh, do you get parts for it?
Yeah.
How is it still running?
Yeah.
Is the paperwork in order? Like that's what I think really makes these cars special, despite them being so reliable and I would say enjoyable to drive. It's the memories that people have with these cars.
Correct.
Not just about how the 800 in general changed, India's automotive space, but like for many people it was a first car, or they learned to drive in it, or they had their first date or their first accident, whatever. There are so many memories that people have with the 800, and that's truly a humbling factor which sort of makes me want to drive this car all along, because it's a complete time capsule.
Yeah. And I mean, she's played a very big role in, the automotive history
Absolutely.
in India as well. It was the first time a lot of modern features
Indeed.
and, the driving comfort really was sort of introduced to
Absolutely.
the Indian customer. So coming back to this car, if you can go through it, what are the highlights that you sort of spot on this one?
So on first glance, I think, like I said, it's an excellent specimen.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of its original bits still in place, which several SS80s that survive to this day don't have.
Right.
Like if you come around here, you see this chrome lining here on the rain gutter.
Right.
Is something that a lot of cars are missing, whereas this has got it in pristine shape.
Yeah.
The chrome lining here on the weather strip also, like few cars have got them bent out of shape, there's rust. I think this is probably the best I've ever seen. Also this little chrome here on the C-pillar trim, again something you don't see often.
Yeah.
It still retains the original OK sticker that all the cars got once they left the plant back in those days. original Suzuki made in Japan glasses, original rims I would assume, and also those steel caps which these cars did get back in the day. Of course, a lot of cars don't have them right now because they would get stolen or they were prone to falling off. So people didn't put them or they replaced them with the black plastic ones that came on the cars later.
But if one was to get them now, are these available?
They are available, but sellers often think that they're selling something extremely premium and they feel like they're selling gold, so you can expect them to be sold at an exorbitant rate. But yeah, I mean, it's in excellent shape. And the good part is that it's a car that's been left as is, you know. Like here also you see these little stickers that run along the backside. Many cars don't have that because obviously they've been painted or they've had a shunt and they've been taken out. But this retains it here, original badging in its correct positioning. And if you come around here is what I'd like to show you, the most elusive part for which people will beg, borrow, steal, maybe even give their life. This mirror. Again, back in those days, these small parts like I said, the wheel caps would get stolen, this would get stolen. So a lot of people would take out the mirror and hide it somewhere safe so that nobody could just pluck it off.
So one has to be careful with that. Even
very careful. I would suggest maybe you should also put it away when you're not using the car or the car ever gets parked outside, because somebody who has an SS80 may just come and take it. Because this is very tough to find, and you know, I'm so happy that it has all these things in place because that's what really makes it a complete car.
You know, when I bought the car, I was not sure as to what I should do. I mean, I didn't really recognize, to be honest with you, the level of originality as you are pointing out. So I did have, I knew that the interior and all that was in great condition, but I thought I would maybe repaint her, etc. But you know, the more time I've spent thinking about it and you know, discussing with guys like you who are very knowledgeable, it makes me sort of believe that the right thing to do for this car would be to leave her in this
for
condition.
sure, would be to preserve it as it is, because like you can see the paint does have a little bit of fading, a few scratches here and there, but honestly I would not bother. I think that looking at the sheer body line and the lack of rust is enough to let it be as is. Maybe some point later you could give it a nice detailing. Honestly, this does not need an overcoat at all. And you've got a beautiful parking space as well, so this is worth preserving for sure.
Got it. And I think this car has also got preserved possibly because its previous life was in Pune.
Absolutely, and that's a godsend because these cars, have you seen in Bombay, which have been left over the years, like, you know, our coastal air is not very kind to them. That causes them to rust off really badly, and rust is truly like a deal breaker for these cars, because like if you do find a car which is running well but is very rusty, of course we live in a country where everything can be done and is possible to restore, but at the end of the day, you know, the car may not drive as well as you'd want it to, because if the metalwork, the welding is not done correctly, or cheap quality sheet metal is used, it may not drive, you know, straight. It would pull and you would be unhappy. But something like this is, I think, a fabulous specimen.
And you will see that she actually drives very well.
Indeed.
When we take her out for a drive.
She purrs along.
She's very smooth, and you will witness that. What about in the interior? What are the things that one should actually be looking for? And
as far as the interior goes, if you look at the seats, it retains the original seats, which again are tough to find, and I am amazed at how neat these seats are. Like many of the cars would have had, you know, the seats torn, the sponge coming out, but these are still like, it looks as though it rolled out of the factory yesterday. And you can see this beautiful houndstooth pattern here, which was common on several Japanese cars back in those days. This red piping, these tiny headrests. Seat belts, of course, have been added later because the standard car did not come with them. The dashboard also is in immaculate condition. Like, I don't see a single crack or a tear or scratch anywhere on it. Top marks for the interior. I think it's one of the best SS80 interiors I've ever seen. And I mean, listen to the way the door shuts. Like, you won't find this in a modern car either.
It'll give the G-Wagon a run for its money.
Oh, yes.
Good, So what else? Should we have a look at the engine compartment?
Sure. Interesting thing is finding the bonnet release latch from the inside is a bit of a task in this car. So you have to like hunt for it because it's stuck a little at the back. But eventually you get to it. That bonnet opener also, all the SSATs got it. The later model, the initial cars got it, and then it was deleted.
Got it.
So here we've got the little 3-cylinder engine,
Yeah.
which puts out about 37 horsepower.
Yeah.
Which by today's standards, we've got two-wheelers that do more than that.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it is that even though it's such a tiny little engine, so basic, so rudimentary by today's standards, you still have a big smile on your face year to year after you drive this, because it's so peppy and reliable and something that you can navigate in our crowded streets even today.
No,
And
it definitely doesn't feel underpowered by any
Absolutely.
stretch of the imagination.
And everything that's required to make the car go is right before your eyes.
Yeah.
You've got your engine here, you've got your distributor here, your ignition coil, your petrol pipes coming in, like here's your fuel filter, and you can see the petrol coming from the tank through the filter and go through the fuel pump to the carburetor. Like everything is right there. That's why working on these cars, like if you are knowledgeable enough and the car gives you trouble, you would know what's wrong with it. Like if this car does not perform, you know it's either the fuel or the spark that's not being given to the engine. That's why the car is underperforming. But apart from that, there is absolutely nothing that can go wrong with it. And like people have got stories of these cars taking them up to the mountains or as far as to the southernmost tip of India without any trouble at all. And that's what makes this car special. And that's what Maruti did for themselves back in the day, and that's what has made them what they are today.
Correct. The reliability factor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And working on this car, if you are knowledgeable about it, you understand carburetors, is also a joy. Because everything is at your disposal, and the happiness that one feels when you hear that engine purr to life, I think it's unmatched. Again, for mechanics also, this car would hold some memories because it gave birth to a whole new segment of mechanics and drivers. Whenever you take one of these or an old 800 or a Zen over to a slightly experienced mechanics place, they would have a smile on their face too, because they would say, oh, you know, this is the first car I worked on 30 years ago.
Correct.
And that's again brings me back to that point that that's what I love about these cars, because they're just not good cars, but they are a treasure trove of memories for so many people. And the fact that it puts a smile on other people's face is something that I truly love.
And even on this car, I mean, when I got her, she was in very good condition, as we can see. But she did have some issues with the carburetor, right? Because you've helped me with that.
To be honest, actually, the carburetors that these cars got, they were Mikuni, made by a company named Mikuni, which is Japanese. The SSATs got a Mikuni made in Japan carburetor. The later 800s, eventually it was Indianized. It was made by a company named UCAL in collaboration with Mikuni. Now this car, as you know, is very less driven. The odometer claims it has only 32,000 kilometers, which even I failed to believe. I thought maybe it's crossed a lakh and rolled over again. But looking at the sheer condition of the car is enough to say that, you know, it's genuine. So, but due to lack of use and constant sitting and lack of service of the carburetor, there are things that tend to jam up. Like this carburetor has got two butterflies, what we call, or you know, venturies. So there is a secondary butterfly that opens at high speed and at speeds after 60 kilometers per hour. That had jammed up, and when I took the whole thing apart, when I shared the images with you, you could have seen it was completely gunked up, it was stuck. It took a lot of spray, paint thinner and other techniques we used to free it up, like heating it, and it did free up eventually. And that's what makes the car so rev happy. And it's very basic, you know, you press the accelerator, fuel comes from the pump into the carburetor, the jets do their job, and the car moves. There is nothing complicated, no sensors, no ECU, none of that nonsense that's going to cause you to be stranded someday. It's that basic and it's that simple, and that's the sheer beauty of it.
Plus, you know, to add to that, that you were able to fix it, and you know, the cost for doing that was also so reasonable.
Absolutely.
Right? Which is again, I think what makes, you know, the ownership of this car, at least in today's context, also, you know, it's simple. It's not that expensive really to fix these as well.
It isn't.
And they're fairly straightforward. They're
and you know, like the SSAT being a car that went out of production 38 years ago, there are certain things, cosmetic, that you may not find, mechanical things specific like the brake discs, the suspension bits, etc., which may require a bit of hunting. But the engine is the same engine that was used towards the end of the late 90s and the early 2000s once carburation went out of circulation, but everything is the same. Of course, the SSAT got everything Suzuki, SGP, Suzuki genuine parts, while the other later cars got MGP. But of course, those can be used and they're as reliable. But the thing is that working on them, like I said, is not that difficult because Maruti still manufactures the engine parts, and the reason being that these cars, maybe not SS80s that much, but the later model, the SB308, the Zens, the Altos, are still seen in massive numbers in the northeast. If you visit Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram, or even Uttarakhand for that matter, up north, these states have got tiny roads which are difficult to maneuver through, and a big car is going to struggle on that. It is these little things that manage to conquer those roads. And how? Like when I visited Meghalaya, every second car was an 800, and that had over 2 lakh kilometers on the odometer. So I would make it a point to have an interesting conversation with the drivers and ask them that, your car has run so much, what have you done to it? And say 9 out of 10 drivers said that it's still running on the original engine. It's never been opened up. All I have done is change the oil and coolant on time. And that's really what it is. If you take care of these, they will serve you. They'll probably outlast you, in short. I mean, that's Japanese quality for you.
Yeah. So how does one contact you? Because I would highly recommend that, if anyone wants to speak to you or send their car to you, I would definitely ask them to talk
I'll
to
put
you.
my Instagram down there. If you do need help, drop me a DM.
Great. So please do that, because I've had a great experience in working with him. The more I speak to him about this car, it's great to see how much knowledge he has and how passionate he is. And like I said, the working relationship has also been great.